Hey there, good morning everybody. It is Sunday, March the 7th at 8 o'clock in the morning, and actually it's Saturday, March the 6th at 8 o'clock at night. It's 12 hours before, but as you know, I record Saturday so that I can have Sunday mornings to be with the Lord. So, here we are. Doesn't matter when or what day, what time. I'm just glad you're watching. We're in the book of Ecclesiastes, and we're covering it chapter by chapter, as we do all of our books, and we're in chapter number 7 today. So we finished the first half of the book yesterday. Now we're into the second half, and so far it's not gotten any more lighthearted, any better, I should say. But that's because life is viewed through the eyes of a carnal man or the eyes of a lost man. It's the life if you're not a Christian, if there's nothing beyond this world. And Solomon has been waxing eloquent as to how challenging and difficult it would be to be this kind of person. So let's go ahead and pray, and we're going to cover chapter number 7. I think it's the longest chapter of the book so far. Father, we ask your blessing on our study here. Would you give your people wisdom as we read and learn today? We need to hear from you, and we ask your help in Christ's name. Amen. All right. Solomon is the author. He wrote this book in his old age, looking back at his entire life, but solely viewed under the sun, which means only this world, that's all that there is. Verse number 1, chapter number 7. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. So sprinkled throughout here, you're going to see some helpful principles, some bits of wisdom, and so forth. And this is one of those. A good name is better than precious ointment. So your reputation with other people matters more than wealth does. And he talks about that in Proverbs as well. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, he says there. But the second half of this verse, in the day of death, than the day of one's birth. So there's that discouragement again. It's better to die than to be born because of the struggles of this life and how there's no payoff for any of it. It's all vanity. And we're going to see this as he builds this case. The case being built is that the struggle is better than mirth. Going through problems is better than having a life of ease. So let's keep reading here and we'll see this begin to build. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart. So he says it's better to go to a funeral than it is to a birthday party. Because the funeral is going to help you realize how short life is and how little time we have to make a difference, rather than just going and celebrating and having a good time. So mourning does more for our hearts than feasting or celebrating does. Verse 3, sorrow is better than laughter. For by the sadness of the countenance, the heart is made better. And there he just spells it out, doesn't he? That sadness makes the heart better rather than laughter. Laughter and celebration and parties, they're fun, but they don't make us better people. And yet mourning and struggle and sadness will make us better people. Verse 4, the heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. So he's saying this is even a choice here. Wise people want to be around those who are having a tough time and want to engage in the struggle more than they want the life of ease. Because the struggle makes something out of us that a life of ease does not. So foolish people want the life of ease. Foolish people want the easy ride. They want the problem-free life. But wise people don't. They don't want an escape from it. They want to have to go through it. Verse number 5, it is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools. So this chapter, more than any other, is starting to sound a lot like Proverbs, isn't it? So it's better to hear a wise man correct you or rebuke you than it is to hear a fool sing your praises. You know, the fool's like, hey, you know, let's all walk this stupid road together, and whatever comes, we'll deal with it when it shows up. The wise man says, hey, don't do that. And Solomon says it's better to be rebuked by wise people than to hear the fools sing to you. Verse number 6, For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool. This also is vanity. And so the foolish man that lives for nothing and has nothing to invest his life in, his laughter is like a common sound. It's like the crackling of thorns under a pot. It's vanity, emptiness. Verse 7, surely oppression maketh a wise man mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart. So when we're oppressed unjustly, it angers us. We struggle. We want to know why. Why is this happening? Why is God allowing it? And then whenever you see this gift, very often it means a bribe. So a gift destroyeth the heart, a bribe destroyeth the heart. When someone offers you something to get you to do wrong. And by the way, there is a difference between a bribe and a reward. Sometimes people will criticize us and they'll say, you bribe children to ride the Sunday school bus. No, riding the Sunday school bus is a good thing. Then when we offer them an incentive to come, that's not a bribe, that's a reward. That's like saying, if a child gets all A's on his report card, you give them $25. Well, that's not a bribe. Getting good grades is a good thing. That's a reward. And we need to get back to realizing the difference between those two things. But taking bribes to do something wrong, that will destroy our hearts. Verse 8, better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. And so once something is all wrapped up and completed, that's better than just getting it off the ground. You can apply that a lot of different ways. And then we're told here that the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. And that makes sense to us, doesn't it? Someone who, rather than racing ahead to get what they think they deserve hastily, they're patient, they put in the time, they put in the effort, they put in the labor, and then God comes through for them. Be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger resteth in the bosom of fools. Again, very much a Proverbs-like chapter here, so we're not supposed to be hasty in anger, because anger is a trait of foolish men and foolish women. We ought to have peace and spirit fullness that keeps us from becoming hastily angered or angry as a reaction. We ought to be in control of our spirit. Nothing wrong with being angry. If someone harmed my family, I would be angry, and justifiably so. But I don't have to just react. I can choose that anger. Verse 10, say not thou, what is the cause that the former days were better than these? For thou dost not inquire wisely concerning this. This is one of my favorite verses in all of Ecclesiastes. It says here, say not thou, what is the cause that the former days were better than these? So what's this talking about? Those folks that say, oh, back in the good old days. We hear that a lot, right? And here it says, what is the cause that the former were better? Why were the good old days so good? Well, the more you start thinking about that, you realize, maybe they weren't all that good. You think of just the last 100 years. What has come about in the last 100 years that make our lives so comfortable? Well, the automobile, number one, and I know it had been around slightly longer than 100 years. How about air conditioning? How about indoor heat, forced air furnaces? How about indoor plumbing, indoor restroom facilities? How about Adolf Hitler isn't a threat today? How about World War II and all of our young men going off to war at 16, 17, 18 years old and losing their lives? Every community losing many of their young men to death in the war. The good old days weren't all that good when you get down to it. And here's the reality. Every age has the same struggles, the same problems that every other age has. The only thing we've developed is technologically. And that's the only advancement we've made. Everything else is the same. We talk about crime. Oh, crime is so much worse today than it was when I was a kid. The fact is, no, it's not. It's about the same, if not less severe. It's interesting when you start looking at statistics of things, and yet we shelter our children more than we ever have before, or we were when we were kids, and crime is lower. It's all the cycle of life. Sometimes you're on the top, and sometimes you're on the bottom. If you're on the bottom, don't worry, you're on your way to the top because you can't get any lower than you are now. You're going to go right back up. If you're on the top, good. I hope you enjoy it for the brief time it lasts because you're going back down again. And round she goes, and that's everybody's life in every area. Verse 11, wisdom is good with an inheritance, and by it there is profit to them that see the sun. For wisdom is a defense, and money is a defense. But the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. And so he's talking about two things here, wisdom and money, two good things to have. And why? Because they're a defense. Wisdom is a defense against that which would hurt your soul. Money is a defense against that which would hurt your body. And so money has its good uses. Money itself is not evil. Loving money, the pursuit of money at all costs is evil. The desire to live life solely for the acquiring of money, that's a problem. But we know that... Lost my train of thought all of a sudden. That's the beauty of live video, and we're not even live, but I'm not starting over. Those two things, possessing wisdom, possessing money, they can help you defend yourself against certain things. Verse 13, consider the work of God. And now he brings God into the picture. And this is the first time we've seen that, other than God saying that eating and drinking and resting and joy in life is a gift from God. But now we're talking about the acts of God. Consider the work of God, for who can make that straight which he hath made crooked? In the day of prosperity be joyful, but in the day of adversity consider. God also hath set the one over against the other, to the end that man should find nothing after him. All things have I seen in the days of my vanity. There is a just man that perisheth in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man that prolongeth his life in his wickedness. And here more vanity is being discussed. Righteous men die early, and sometimes wicked men live long lives. And it makes no sense, and he's attributing this all to the will of God in the end. Now remember, there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of the sovereignty of God at times. Some folks believe that God's sovereignty controls everything. If I had a coin here and I flipped the coin and it turned up heads, some people would say because God wanted it to be heads. But in this book even, we'll come across in Ecclesiastes, it even says time and chance happeneth unto them all. So God doesn't control every single detail. Now he allows the random things that transpire to occur, but that doesn't mean he made them occur. If I flip the coin, it doesn't mean God made heads come up, but he allowed heads to come up, you see. And is there a time when he could control that? Absolutely. But generally speaking, God doesn't control every single little detail of that. So, next. All the things have I seen. Okay, verse number 16. But the righteous, be not righteous over much, neither make thyself over wise. Why shouldest thou destroy thyself? This is talking about those who obsess over certain things. What's he obsessing over? Being righteous. What else? Being wise. You know, there's a principle of high achievement. And they say that a certain amount of effort that gets you to about 85 or 90% of a result, it requires the same amount of effort to get you that last 10 to 15%. And the truth is, none of us really possess that. I often tell our church, I'll say, you know what, I'd rather do 5 things on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd rather do 5 things at a 7 or an 8 than just do one thing at a 10. You know, you look at my life and what I've got. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a pastor. To an extent, I'm an employee. I work for God, but I'm employed by the Lord also. I'm responsible to our church people. I'm a Christian. So I've got all these responsibilities and all these hats to wear. I'm probably not going to be perfect at any of them. But I want to hit a 7 or an 8 there if I can. If I really can, I want to hit that 8.5. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not a 10 husband. I'm not a 10 father. I'm not a 10 pastor. I'm not a 10 Christian. I'm not a 10 employee. At the same time, I hope I'm not a one husband or a one father or even a 3 or a 4 or a 5. I'm not going to obsess over minutia to get it perfect because I got too much to do. My desk right now, it's a little bit messy because I got stuff to do. Stuff that's more important than making sure that every little thing on my desk is where it ought to be. I don't know. Maybe there's a link between perfectly clean desks and lack of productivity in matters where it counts. I don't know. Anyway, so now I'm rambling. Let's keep moving. Next, verse 17. Be not overmuch wicked, neither be thou foolish. Why shouldest thou die before thy time? So he's talking about a balance here, isn't he? Don't be over righteous. Don't be over wise. Don't be over wicked. Don't be over foolish. Because there's a price to be paid in each of those areas if you do. Verse number 18. It is good that thou shouldest take hold of this. Yea, also from this withdraw not thine hand. For he that feareth God shall come forth of them all. And so there it is, right? We got to fear God. And we fear God and we realize that we're answerable to God. But at the same time, we know that we're not going to be perfect. And we understand that God knows we're not going to be perfect. And we read in the book of Psalms where David said, He remembereth our frame. He knoweth that we are but dust. God's aware that you're not perfect. So striving to be so is a bit of a waste of time because it's never going to come a reality. Verse number 19, wisdom strengtheneth the wise more than 10 mighty men which are in the city. So a smart brain is more important than a strong body. A wise mind is better than how much you can bench press. For there is not a just man upon the earth that doeth good and sinneth not. So as you know, there's no one that's perfect. This is Romans 3:10 and 3:23, isn't it? Also, take no heed unto all words that are spoken, lest thou hear thy servant curse thee. Man, this is good advice. Such good advice. I remember hearing a preacher tell another preacher a story. He said, I had this situation going on in my church and I wasn't sure what to do about it. And so I started investigating and I started talking to some of the people. And then I got in over my head. And so I called this other pastor for advice. And that pastor said to me, how do you know all of this? And he said, well, I started asking questions and digging to find it all out. And that counselor said, you shouldn't know any of this. Do you know that other people's opinion are none of your business? Other people's opinion of you are none of your business. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to preach a sermon tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. I don't know that I want to know what people think of it. You know why? Some people are going to like it probably. Some people are going to be somewhere in the middle. Yeah, it was fine. Other people are going to say, it's terrible. I don't need to know that people think my preaching's terrible. That's going to affect it the next time I get up to preach. That stuff gets in your head. Then you start wondering. Then you've got imaginations going, like 1 Corinthians 6 talks about, casting down imaginations. It's better to not know. I heard this saying one time, I forget where I got it. If my answers frighten you, you should cease asking scary questions. So if you don't want to know the answer to something, don't ask the question. Hey, how do I look in this hat? Unless you really want to know, don't ask. So what is the verse again? Verse number 21. Also, take no heed unto all words that are spoken, lest thou hear thy servant curse thee. You know what? Your servants are probably going to curse you. You probably shouldn't listen to everything they're saying. Eavesdrop, trying to get the dirt. Verse number 23. For oftentimes also thine own heart knowest that thou thyself likewise hast cursed others. Don't be surprised because you've done it to others. If you've got a servant that curses you, there were times when you were someone else's servant and you cursed them. Who hasn't worked for a boss that they disliked and couldn't stand and talked about behind their back to the other employees? We've all been guilty of that, haven't we? Which takes us back to verse number 29 or 20. We all have sinned. Next, verse 23. All this I proved by wisdom. I said, I will be wise, but it was far from me. that which is far off and exceeding deep. Who can find it out? So Solomon's even saying, as I searched for wisdom, I couldn't get it. Even though God said that he was wiser than any man ever. Verse 25, I applied my heart to know and to search and to seek out wisdom and the reason of things, and to know the wickedness of folly, even of foolishness and madness. And I find more bitter, let's just stop there. And I did skip verse 24, that which is far off and exceeding deep, who can find it out? He said, I sought this, I searched for it, I tried to find it, I couldn't find it. Anywhere I looked, I couldn't come up with it. And then we're going to switch gears here, 26. I find more bitter than death the woman, whose heart is snares and nets, and her hands as bands. Whoso pleaseth God shall escape from her, but the sinner shall be taken by her. Now, first off, we know the scripture says a good wife is a gift from God. Whoso findeth a wife findeth a good thing and obtaineth favor of the Lord. Now, but there are bad wives. There are good husbands, there are bad husbands. You can always flip these, ladies. Don't just think that it's always against you. Male authors are going to give you the male perspective. You can flip it right around, though. Good women, bad women. Good men, bad men. Good wives, good husbands, bad husbands. So you could even plug it in if you want. I find more bitter than death the man, whose hearts is snares and nets, and his hands is bands. Whoso pleaseth God shall escape from him, but the sinner shall be taken by him. And so, who else would know other than Solomon with 1,000 women in his life? 700 wives, 300 concubines, it's 1,000 women. That means he only saw each wife about once every 3 years. That's strange to consider, isn't it? And he knows, because he found the wrong kind of women. And out of 1,000, you're bound to pick a few duds, and he certainly did. And he says, the wrong woman, the wrong man is more bitter than death. Verse number 27, behold, this have I found, saith the preacher, counting one by one to find out the account, which yet my soul seeketh, but I find not. One man among 1,000 have I found, but a woman among all those have I not found. And so this is a bitter man who's had his run-ins with the wrong kind of women too many times. Lo, this only have I found, that God hath made man upright, but they have sought out many inventions. God created man in the Garden of Eden, innocent and wholesome and without sin, and yet we figured out a way to really ruin it all, and we keep on doing it, don't we? All right, that's a little long for a Sunday morning, but I'm glad that you watched, and I hope that you followed it all the way through, and we'll be back tomorrow morning live yet again. So Monday morning, 10 a.m. in our places. Thanks for watching. Do me a favor, like, love, and share the post. Let folks know. If you're local, come on, see us at Lighthouse. We'd be glad to have you. God bless you. Have a great Lord's Day.